Okay. All right. Hope you had a good lunch. I don't see any sleepy faces. That's good. That's good feedback. Thank you so much for joining. And the title is pretty interesting. It makes you think, right? I'll collect what you think about the title. Okay, the subtitles are also working for accessibility reasons, but pardon me if something funny comes up while I'm talking. But I wanted to spend some time, talk more on what the WebAssembly, what is happening in WebAssembly, and what does the latest generation thinks about it, and what can we do to get them involved. Before that, hi everyone, my name is Ashwin Kumar Uppala. I work at GitHub as an associate program manager, building the GitHub Octantonships program. But when I'm not doing that, I love engaging with the hacker community. I also work as a coach at Major League Hacking, so if you have done hackathons as a student, or maybe after working, you will probably find people from Major League Hacking, staffing hackathons. I also started my own community out of it called Hackerabad because I was the only one doing stuff and I wanted more leaders, build more leaders. So I started something called a community in my local area. And I'm super active on social media. So if you are someone like me, happy to connect with you. It's AshwinEXE everywhere. Unfortunately, I don't have blue sky invites. Otherwise, I would have posted them here, but that's all right. My talk is pretty short, but I'll try to dig deeper. It got upgraded. That means we may have more time for Q&A. And if not, if you think your questions are very specific, something that only you want answered, feel free to find me around with a yellow backpack. I'm happy to talk around. But if you think your questions are something others might have too, so feel free to raise your hands, and I'm happy to answer them publicly. But first, let's do a quick show of hands if you have tried WebAssembly. Have you ever tried WebAssembly? Wow, not a lot of people. Okay, that's a good crowd. That's a good crowd. If you haven't, or if you have, just nod, or you can raise your hands if your reaction to using WebAssembly was something like this. That was me when I tried it for the first time. But for those who don't know, a very bookish, a very straightforward answer for WebAssembly would be, and I'm reading this word to word, is it is a binary instruction format designed for safe and efficient execution of web browser. A not so geeky answer to this would be, you're playing you're playing a puzzle game, maybe a chess, maybe a pretty cool puzzle game in your computer. And when you double click the icon, it loads. It takes some time to load, and then the game starts. If the game is made on WebAssembly, it loads faster. That is a very simple example of what WebAssembly can do. The purpose is it's a format that can be executed directly by browsers. So typically when we are coding in other languages, we compile them into binary code, which can be executed by the CPU. But WebAssembly is supposed to run directly in browsers, which is pretty cool. Lots of use cases there. But why should I use it? What's the point here? Why am I sitting here? And I had the same question 1 year ago when I attended my very first conference, and it was called Open Source Summit. And I was a speaker there, and one of my friend just took me to a talk, and it was called Wasm. Funny thing, I did not know Wasm, and I did not know Edge. And I'm sitting in a talk where the speaker is talking about Wasm Edge. I have no idea. The good thing is, I am super excited. Like, this is so cool. I don't know about this. I have so much to learn from it. That is amazing. Like, I really want to do that. It made me curious. It made me curious. Like, there's so much I could learn more in the WebAssembly space. I learned more. I networked to all the folks. 6 months later, I'm still in that space. 1 year later, today, I'm still in that space. And while I was submitting for the Civo Navigate conference, I was like, why is that happening? I got so much curious attending a talk on Wasm Edge. And even then, why am I not progressing enough? It turns out curiosity is not equal to motivation. Something that I have been seeing a lot in the WebAssembly space. When you hear something, not just WebAssembly, happens everywhere. When you see something exciting, something new is happening, like new version of Kubernetes is out, or another cloud native project just graduated, that is so amazing, that makes you curious. But that is not enough to try it out or plug it into your existing project or make something out of it. So I wanted to talk what causes the motivation for you to build something specifically in WebAssembly, but you can use that concept in a lot other technologies. Before coming to this talk, I made a small tweet. Yeah, it should be readable. So I made a small tweet asking folks who have not tried WebAssembly or someone who's making a career transition or probably a student, have you tried it? What's your opinion on it? And I got pretty good comments. People were like, oh, it is good, but diving in it was slightly difficult. Oops. Some of them came to know about this technology from meetups. That's how people find out about latest cloud native technologies. And some are like, oh yeah, I know a couple of folks working on this, which is pretty great. One of my favorite comments was, it is the cool new kid that everyone wants to be friends with but don't know how to approach it. And that technically goes for everything out there. But Wasm is just presently in that state right now. And the reason we are having this problem, and I want to put it out in a couple of challenges, is number one, do we have a community for everyone in WebAssembly space? One of the biggest problems that I've seen is people want to join, people want to understand how this technology works, but they could not find people. And when they find people, it's like, oh, this is something that I don't belong here. So a couple of folks raised your hands when you said you tried WebAssembly. Can I see those hands again? Can you tell me why did you try WebAssembly for the first time? You can just say it out loud and I'll say it after you.
Very good question. So I brought up with the JVM, and so different paths, and I was searching for something cool new as a toolkit, and yeah.
Okay, so you're looking for something cool. There was someone else here. Yeah, why did you try WebAssembly for the first time?
I wanted to run Rust application in browser.
Okay, you were looking for a problem, and WebAssembly kind of solved that, right?
It's just basically WebAssembly allows you to just come up with a binary function, and then you can reference the function from JavaScript.
It was solving a problem for you. Anyone else? All right, so you did it because you were curious. You wanted to try something cool, and you did it. It was solving a problem for you. If we bring these people together, it's hard to keep that sustainable because these two folks have different goals, right? So a lot of communities that we see when they're forming up very new, like WebAssembly, is you want to do something really cool, or you have a very specific goal you want to do out of it. And the problem comes when you want to sustain it because priorities change after some time. For now, I'm doing it for fun, but after some time, I want to show it to my boss how it's relevant, right? So that's one of the biggest problems we're seeing in communities, and that's why it's so hard to build a community which is something as new as in WebAssembly. The second problem, the challenge that we face is it's not mature enough to have debugging tools. So someone who is new to WebAssembly cannot really know how to debug their own project, or we don't have a super transparent debugging tool like how OpenTelemetry does it for WebAssembly. And the third one, and this is my favorite, and not sure if it's a challenge, but it is quite interesting, is WebAssembly is currently the latest person in the town to be part of the hype train, kind of like how Kubernetes was and all of the projects before that, but it's certainly a challenge I want to highlight of how it can be both good and bad if you look at it in a very certain way. So, yeah. All right. The way we can solve these challenges is by something I like this statement called don't buy stars, build them. Not this star, not the GitHub stars. By stars, I mean talent. What I want to highlight here is what are the things we can do to make more leaders in this WebAssembly space so we can solve the problem that I just highlighted. Currently, what I'm seeing as part of all the conferences and awesome talks around there is we're trying to solve a problem which is already out there with the existing community. The problem is we're trying to follow the same, reinventing the same loop that has happened before. So in order to avoid that, we need to find a way to scale that community, and for that, we need to build new leaders. Talking about forming a new community and leaders, I want to point out a very famous framework, and for that, I'm going to pick a very popular example, a piñata. Does everyone know what a piñata is? Anyone who does not know what a piñata is? Okay, everyone knows what a piñata is. If you know the piñata game, let me explain it. It's a pretty popular one. You have a piñata, you kind of, you're blindfolded. One of the players is blindfolded in that game, and the piñata is filled with candies and stuff, and the audience, which is surrounded by the player, kind of guides the person to hit the piñata, and when the player hits the piñata, everyone takes the reward. It's pretty similar in open source, right? If you look at one way, the piñata is the project. There's just one maintainer looking after that project and a lot of contributors and users after it, which is a good thing. I mean, this is the standard flow that we see in open source projects is there are a lot of users and there's a lot of pressure on that single maintainer to maintain a very specific project. That is the current space of how WebAssembly is in. We have very less projects in this space, very few maintainers, and quite some users, but they're not sure where do they fit in. The way we can solve this very specific space of WebAssembly is by reversing this piñata effect. So you go from users who are curious, turn their motivation into making them leaders. And once there are enough leaders in this space, you will find a lot of new projects. That's kind of how Kubernetes, if you have heard of the way how Kubernetes grew up, is kind of like follow the same pattern. And the way to initiate that is we need to rethink the way we deliver the WebAssembly space to someone new. You see, when I hear a lot of folks who are making a transition in tech, and when they bump into WebAssembly, and they're like, hey, have you tried WebAssembly in your project? Or is this something cool that I can be part of? I would recommend talking about how you can integrate it or how you can make it more approachable. The initial problem we have like, oh, we do not have enough documentation, or we don't have enough contributors, or we don't have enough people to relate to the problem, whether WebAssembly is for me or not. Or how do I adopt this? How do I tell that this thing is relevant for my solution? And in order to rethink that, building a community is essential. So when I learned about WebAssembly, I learned it from conferences. I learned it from a lot of enterprises that were adopting it. So what I did for this talk, I ran the other way. I just ran the very other way, and I talked to absolute young developers, who are in their teens, who don't work, who only code for fun, and ask what do they think about WebAssembly and how is their experience have been with WebAssembly. And it's interesting. It's not so different, but it gives me a lot of points of what makes a really good community sustainable. Because what I have seen is the young generation has a very good sense of forming a very strong community. So some of them says, hey, it's pretty good. It helped me reduce my run times. I had a lot of astronomical calculation. WebAssembly helped me follow that. I had a use case. And what else do we have? We have, it makes my game run pretty smoothly. And one of my favorites is I haven't interacted with anyone in the community because I particularly found them from discussions or forums. So that's where it caught my eye. All of these folks, when I asked them, how did you learn about this technology? And they're like, oh, I looked up a lot on Stack Overflow. little bit of documentation, and most of them were forums and existing discussions. This is where the problem is arising. We don't have a central place or a group of people where we can come and just talk about it as we want to. So, speaking after this, coming back to the point of don't buy stars, you got to build them. In order to build new leaders, that means forming a new community, what we have to do is build a self-sustainable framework for community. It's easy to start a community. It's difficult to sustain it. It's even harder to pass it on. What I want to talk about is how you can build a framework which helps you go through this seamlessly. When I said when people start communities, especially based on a technology, one of the most common patterns that we see is you have a very strong sense of mission. Like, you want to make this technology amazing, or you want to make it accessible, or you want this to be more diverse. Great, that is amazing. But priorities change after some time. What you joined the community for, someone else might have a different goal. A lot of people join to look for jobs. A lot of people join to add a feature request. So the thing that binds a lot of community members together, and you will observe this quite often, is the sense of shared struggle. Oh, you had the same problem, like I had so much problem with runtimes, and you had that too, and that's why you joined this community. Or, you know, the previous community was not that diverse, and I had a bad time, and that's why you joined another community. So that is why people join and stay in a community when there is a sense of shared struggle. Something that you want to keep in mind if you are trying to build a leadership or a community of WebAssembly technology. Another thing that you can do to build new leaders is by hiring them. This is something not a lot of people do, but in open source, there's a lot of room for opportunities. And I get so happy because I myself work building a GitHub internship program, which is like joining partners and open source projects with talented students. And I see so many open source projects and partners coming together because they want to give a try to all the new fresher experience. It would be so cool to see WebAssembly being part of that. WebAssembly projects that students be part of and learn from them. So my experience from building a community around GitHub internships was we wanted to bridge together that open source project with talent of student who are contributing to open source. And one thing that I have learned from it is when you are building a community with a sense of shared struggle, the members tend to stay together much better. Now, going back to the title, is Wasm here too soon right now? Remember that Kubernetes was ahead of its time too. When Kubernetes, oh yeah, there you go. I skipped a slide. Oh, maybe showed you a spoiler. Kubernetes was ahead of its time. Kubernetes, if you have seen the documentary, it's amazing. You should check it out. When Kubernetes was in its early stage, it was so hard to convince the leadership to make it a reality. Or even then, it was so hard for its adoption because until Docker came in, it was so hard for it to adopt. Same goes for WebAssembly. Right now, we don't have a debugging tools, or we don't have enough documentation or the resources to make it more approachable, but it's part of the process. Wasm does not have enough work opportunities yet, but building communities is one of the best ways to encourage that cycle of how you can make a healthy mentorship and mentor-mentee format. And honestly, there may not be currently a lot of Wasm welcoming communities, and that's what I wanted to point out. The points that I just said, the piñata effect is what will help you if you want to start your own or if you want to join a community of your own, is how you can welcome new folks or new talent in this space. And those are the points that I had, and whoa, that was on time. So that is it. And if you have any questions around it, now is your time. Or if it's something very specific, feel free to reach out to me. But I'm gonna lurk around here. Feel free to ask any questions. Yeah.
If I'm thinking about doing machine learning in the browser, is it too soon to think about Wasm or anything like that as one possibility way to do it? Or should I just use JavaScript? Or what are the kind of trade-offs there, do you think?
Your question is, if I'm using machine learning in the browser, is it too soon for me to adopt WebAssembly? I'm not sure. Although that's a very technical question, and I'm happy to answer that, it's not related to what I'm talking around here. Happy to answer that on a one-on-one question. But what I want to encourage is, hey, you have an idea. How can I have 4 more folks join you and have a more constructive decision on this, a more constructive topic on this? And for that, how can I build this place where we can have more people talking around it? And for that, we have to be more welcoming, or how do we start this healthy conversation that even if you or me are not around, this discussion still continues. Does that make sense? Awesome. There's another one. Yeah. Eddie.
Thank you. Just checking out what's on behind me, I was going to ask. What would you, so I love what you said, great talk, I really love how you're so passionate about it. And you're saying people who get together to talk about the same kind of subject. What happens if someone or a group of people come in and start trying to kind of direct the conversation in a different place? I mean, to give one kind of, I guess, simple example would be you're focusing on open source, and people want to come in and just share funny memes all the time, which gives a lot of noise. And it's not necessarily taking a different direction, but it's kind of polluting the conversation. What would your thoughts and suggestions be around that?
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, I started a community on Wasm, and some people are joining and they're talking about memes or anything like that. It depends. There are 2 things to this. One, as a leader, is the mission of my community strong? Remember when I said, when you start a community with a very positive mindset, it's great, but it can dilute down or it can redirect to something else very fast. So if you have a sense of shared struggle, people stick to it. If not, it's important that you remind them. But it is also a good feedback. What is happening from the audience? Is this something you are trying to learn? If there's a lot of jokes around, are they trying to be more friendly, more welcoming? Are they trying to make sure that, is this how other communities, members from other communities talk to? So there's a lot of points to learn from. But as a leader, I would be more firm with what the mission of the community is, and if you feel that this is where you're crossing the line, this is where you can totally jump in and say, hey, I think that's enough for the day. So I'm just gonna go over there first. Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm fairly new to the web dev sort of aspect. But web dev isn't capable of fully replacing like JavaScript at the moment, is that right? So it wouldn't really play well with the common concepts of like using it in React and things like that. How would that kind of work in the future?
You mean with WebAssembly?
WebAssembly, yeah.
So if WebAssembly turns out right, the way it's supposed to, it has the potential to be the de facto for all the web standards. It can spin up very fast. It plugs in everywhere. It's neutral to what language you use. It's going to be amazing. But what's the problem right now? Why is no one using it, even though it has the potential for that? That's the exact problem that Kubernetes had a couple of years ago, where Google and all the big tech companies were dominating. And the shared struggle there was, oh, we don't like dominance. We want to create something more vendor neutral and more accessible for all the companies out there. And that's why they came together and like, let's create a microservices or open source Borg. If you don't know, the context is like all of them had a problem, and then they started this community of releases of how we can all work together. And this is like no one is getting paid for it, but just because all of them had the same problem, they kind of over the years implemented Kubernetes to what it is today. Similarly, for WebAssembly, it has the potential. The problem is we don't have enough people with the right mindset, or they are there, just not together. So how we can bring them together to make that a reality? But it does has a lot of potential to be a de facto for web, if that answers your question. Awesome. Anyone else? Yeah.
Thank you. I really love the idea about community building, but you are looking from the perspective of somebody who wants to join a community. When you are an open source project, you are pretty limited in resources if you are not backed by a company. So how can you find contributors or potential contributors? You mentioned having good documentation, having an open format where you can discuss, but is it worth to polish your documentation if you don't know if somebody will jump onto the project?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Especially because we realize how much limited we are, and we are putting our own energy and not expecting anything in return. It is so hard to maintain open source projects. Here's the thing. You are maintaining an open source project, and that is the bottleneck right there. If you are busy, if you are occupied, if you're not there, the project stops. And the point of community is how you create this leadership, self-sustaining leadership, that even if you're not available, how do you make sure there is someone else who can take the leadership as good as you? So that's another aspect. I could not cover it in time, but I would love to talk more about how we can build new leaders or pass on that baton. Something a lot of open source projects face. This challenge is when the prime maintainers are unavailable, the project just stops. And which is okay, but there's room for improvement. We can have more moderators. How do you build those leaders? How do you find those? And that can be solved if you have a really healthy, self-sustaining community. And to answer about the backing, we do have a lot of awesome programs, including ones at GitHub to support open source projects. Highly recommend you apply to them. Octantonships is a great way to find contributors and talent if you want to support your open source project, a great place. But if the question is like, oh, you're spending your own time and energy, and I want it to be worth it, but at the same time, I have job and I have to pay the bills. So it's better when you appoint more leaders. And some of the best communities out there you will see have this amazing feature of focusing entirely a specific segment of their energy and resources on building new leaders. A very good analogy is Kubernetes shadow release program. If you have heard about it, it's an entire separate program just to create new leaders, those who can contribute to Kubernetes. That's it. And it works great. And because of that, the production cycle of Kubernetes is so seamless. But that's just one of the many analogies. You will see great leaders have this ability to create even better leaders. And that's something I would love to talk in detail. I hope that answers your question. Awesome. Anything else? You're good. If you like the slides, if not, everything is in my GitHub repo. And it's hyperlinked, so you can just scan that one. It also redirects there. I also have a feedback form if you want to take a minute, help me become a better speaker. It's open, and everything is out there. And if that's it, thank you so much. And I'll give you 15 minutes back. You can have your coffee and hop into the next session. Thank you so much. My name is Ashwin Kumar.